Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and press the bell icon button. Think happy, be happy. Thank you. The Witch's Castle. The wood was dark and thick. It was not safe to go there towards nightfall, for evil things happened. In the middle of the wood was an ancient, stern castle, gray and frowning. In it lived a witch, an old woman with hard, wicked eyes, a wrinkled skin, and hands like claws. All who saw her were afraid. Even the animals shrank from her. But few saw her in daylight, for every morning she would turn herself into an owl or a cat, a lean and cruel cat with green eyes and sharp claws. She would roam through the forest catching little creatures to kill and cook for supper in the evening, when she turned herself back into a witch. The witch had enchanted the ground about her castle, so that if anyone came within 100 steps of it they were made to stand quite still until she gave them leave to move once more. The only creatures she allowed within this magic circle were young girls. If any came into the circle she turned them into birds and fastened them up in cages of basketwork. These she kept in a cold, dark hour in the castle, never allowing them to see the light of day. She had more than 1,000 of these cages, each with its sad little wood pigeon, canary or nightingale. One sunny day in spring 2 people walked in the forest, not far from the witch's castle. One was a sweet girl named Rosamund, as young and beautiful a maiden as had ever lived in that country. Her friend was a young man called Godfrey. He was tall, straight, and handsome. They were happy, for Godfrey had asked Rosamund to marry him, and this she had promised to do if her parents agreed. Neither had any doubt that their parents would be pleased, for hers were fond of Godfrey, and Godfrey's parents loved Rosamund. For hours the two lovers walked in the wood, and forgot about the passing of time. Before long the sun had almost gone down behind the trees. "We must go home," Godfrey said. "It is late, and we must not get lost, or we may wander near the witch's castle." At this Rosamund shuddered, for everyone knew of the witch and her evil ways. But sad to tell, the two young people lost their path, and as evening fell they sat down for a while under a tree, because Rosamund was weary. Above her in the branches she heard a wood pigeon crooning sadly to itself. Rosamund too began to sing softly. And as Godfrey listened, he also became sad. It seemed as if all their happiness was over. All at once he turned and looked through the trees and, as he did so, he became cold with fear. There, for the first time, he noticed the frowning walls of the witch's castle, and knew that danger was near. He was about to seize Rosamund by the hand and escape with her from the danger, when the little song she was singing suddenly turned into the notes of a nightingale. He was too late. Rosamund was not there. Instead, upon a branch of the tree under which she had been singing, sat a little brown bird, and a great screech owl was circling round it, crying "Tu-wit, tu-wit, tu-who." Rosamund had been changed into a nightingale. At the same moment Godfrey too fell under the witch's spell. He found himself unable to move. He could not even call out the name of Rosamund. The screech owl vanished into the thicket just as the sun faded behind the trees. Almost immediately a hideous old woman appeared and beckoned to the nightingale to come down from its branch. The witch had a basketwork cage in her hand. Into this she put the nightingale, clapping the cage door shut. The bird was her prisoner. She took it away and placed the cage in the cold, dark room in the castle. Then she returned to where Godfrey stood, still helpless, as if rooted to the place where he had last seen Rosamund. The witch spoke to him in her cruel, hard voice, telling him he might go on condition that he left the castle as fast as possible and never came near it again. At last Godfrey found his voice. "Give me back the maiden I love," he begged. "At least let me see Rosamund and speak to her once more." You shall never see her again, young man. Now go and remember, get away from here as far as you can, or you will be turned to stone." Godfrey had nothing to do but to obey. Stumbling through the darkness, he made off as fast as he could, determined to begin his search for Rosamund on the morrow. For many days he looked for someone who might help him in his search, but all were terrified at the very thought of the witch and her enchantments. For weeks he strayed here and there, until one night he sank down to sleep at the edge of a meadow, overcome with weariness and despair. His sleep was restless and troubled. Towards morning he had a dream. He dreamed that he saw, growing on a hillside, a single blood-red flower with a great pearl in its center. He stooped, within the magic circle as outside it. He strode up to the great doorway and touched it with the flower. Instantly it flew open. In the courtyard he stood and listened for the singing of birds. He entered an inner door and began to explore the cold and dismal corridors of the castle. At last he heard the sound he had been listening for, the chirping and singing of hundreds of birds. The sound led him to the dark room where the old woman kept her cages. As he entered the room, she was feeding the birds, pushing scraps of crust and seeds between the bars for her hungry prisoners to lose on a far-arcling with. At first the witch did not hear Godfrey approach because of the noise of the birds. When she saw him she was seized with anger. She cursed and stormed at the young man, but she had no power over him. She sprang at him with her bony claws, but she could not come within 2 steps of him. The flower he held had power to break all her enchantments. The next thing to be done was to find the cage containing his beloved nightingale. He searched high and low, but there were hundreds of nightingales. All at once, Godfrey saw the old woman craftily creeping away with a cage in her hand. Something told him that this must be the cage he had been seeking. Just as the witch reached the door, Godfrey leaped towards her and touched both the old woman and the cage with the scarlet flower. Instantly she lost her power of enchantment. She screamed horribly, and cursed the young man, but he took no notice, and the witch ran from the room and was seen no more. At the touch of the flower, the basketwork cage had sprung open and the nightingale was free. With a glad burst of song it was turned instantly into the fair maiden whom Godfrey had sought so long. It was his own Rosamund. As she clung to him, her arms fast round his neck, they saw that all the other cages had opened, and the birds flown out. They too were turned into young and lovely maidens, so that all the witch's evil was undone. The young man and his betrothed lost no time in getting as far away from the frowning castle as possible. When they returned home, their parents were overjoyed to see them, and preparations were made for the marriage. Rosamund and Godfrey lived happily for the rest of their long lives, and never feared the enchanted castle again.
Like, comment, share, subscribe and press the bell icon and never miss another update.